This is a marvelous psalm. I I read it often. Every time I read it, it blesses my heart, and I have a great encouragement from it. It starts out in verse Psalm 18:1. I will love thee, O Lord, my strength. You know, when you get up in years like I am, you need strength. Now, I'm still a pretty strong fella. I still lift weights. I used to play a lot of sports when I was young, and I still I've got some dumbbells, and I curl those things, and I push them up like that, and I go like that, and I do that. So I try to keep strength. I can grab the boxes and move them, and I can do things, and I still have strength, and it's important. They say even as you increase in years that you need to exercise and do things, because you can still build muscle, and if you don't, you just get flabby, you know. And so exercise is very important. But I know at my age today that I'm not like I was when I was 18 and 20 and 30 and 40, you know. It's just, I'm just not like I was. We used to, back in the old days, it's not like today.
Right.
Football is about turned into a sissy game. It's a bunch of specialists, and got this one comes in on third down, and this one comes in on that. Listen, only thing we knew when I played football, you went both ways. I mean, you offense and defense. And when I played football, you was in there for the whole shot. They got different guys for kickoffs now, different ones for defense, different ones for run defense, different ones for pass defense, and different blockers they come in. This one's a pass blocker. I mean, back when I played football, when men were men, we just went both ways. I mean, I played offense. I centered sometimes. I was a guard, and on defense, I played linebacker, and also played defensive end. And those were my positions. And I never knew anything but from till that ball was kicked off until the last whistle was blown and the game was over, we played. And I don't know. They say they're bigger than we were then, but I don't know if they're in any better shape, because that takes something to go both ways all through a game. I mean, you had to have some stamina and things, and you had to have strength. And I don't have the strength I did when I was and our coach, he was George Young. He was quite a guy. I was a captain of the football team in my senior year, and I'm a fairly good football player, and had got some honors for it and all that. But I was a captain, and Coach Young told me during when we got out for the summer, he said, "Look, Varga," he said, "keep these guys in shape. It's your business now. I don't want a bunch of soft guys and sissies coming back here in the fall." I said, "I'll work them, Coach." And we went out and we practiced all during the week. We practiced and we ran. I gave them wind sprints, and we did this and we did that. We didn't tackle each other and all that, but we were supposed to keep in shape. I knew it, and then we got back, and we went back for our first practice, and Coach Young says, "Well, Varga, did you work them out?" "Oh, yeah." "Are they in shape?" "Yeah." Well, I knew he's a mean old coach. He wanted to work. He wanted you to win, you know. He was I don't know, some of you used to, you don't know, the old Woody Hayes football from Ohio State, or the old football from Nebraska. It was a split T football. You don't even know anything what split T football is today. You had you had your lineman, you had the quarterback was from under the center. He took the snap from under center, and you had two halfback and then a fullback. And you would basically what you would do was you would run the football. Very seldom ever pass the football. The only time you'd pass would be in a rare emergency. What you'd want to do is run the football, make 3 or 4 yards a crack, and run off tackle and this and that. And I mean, that's tough football on the lineman, because you're always out after you had to block someone. But So anyway, George Young, he says, okay, well, let's see how you doing. And I couldn't have had him in as good a shape, but he was going to make us look bad, you know. I mean, he just knew
Anyway, you
that.
look at it.
He ran us into the dirt the first day, and we were sucking air, you know, and what's going on? It's like a bunch of girls. Can't you run? You ain't got no stamina. And you know, he says, I thought, you know, he just did it. You don't dare say nothing to the coach. You just kept your mouth shut and took whatever he lashed out to you. You couldn't, you don't dare say it. You're not fair or this or that. You just, you didn't get him in shape, Marga. I guess not, coach. You know, that's all he could say. You didn't say nothing to the coach. But we were in good shape, and we had we would run the football, and we would go with strength. I said all that talk about strength. When I was a young man, when I was in high school, you know, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, I was in good shape, and I had strength, and through my 20s but in reality, the real strength that we need and the strength that is important is from the Lord. Now let me say something to you. This psalm was written by King David. He was a warrior. The Bible says he took over. Saul was the first king. By the way, in the truth of the matter is this, that God never wanted Israel to have a king. Did you know that? He never wanted them to have a king. He wanted to be their king. He wanted to be their leader. He was their leader. But they got any idea why they begged for a king? Because they wanted to be like the world. They wanted to be like the world. They wanted to have a king. So God gave them their desire, but like in many things, when God gives us our desire sometimes that we want that's not really His will, He sends leanness to their soul. And as He did with Saul and then with King David, but because we do that. But now, David here, it said that Saul had slayed his thousands and David his 10,000s. We remember the Philistines. Remember when David come up against Goliath, and they had a certain thing in war that if you had your main man, and they would fight the main man. Of course, Goliath was coming out there every day, 9 foot something, big old boy, and had a spear like a weaver's beam, the Bible said, and he had all that, and he'd come out there and roar and challenge them. King Saul should have fought him, shouldn't he? Because King Saul was head and shoulders above everybody. He's a big fella.
Right.
Head and shoulders above everybody. That's a big fella. He was closest to that giant that they had, but he didn't have the faith in. Oh, little old David, little old just a teenage boy, shepherd boy. He wanted to see what the battle was. He went on there. He took some cheese and bread down to his brothers. His brothers didn't like him because he had so much faith, you know. And his big brother told him, says, "What you doing here, David?" He tried to belittle him. He says, "Who's taking care of them few sheep you have?" He didn't want to. He just didn't say he's taking a few sheep, you know, like belittle his position. Of course, David said, "I've got someone to take care of my sheep." He said, what are you doing here? And then David heard the Goliath cursing God. Oh boy, where's your God? You ain't got anybody here can fight me? What kind of God you got? Sissy God. And David, he shook his brothers and he said, "Did you guys hear him? What's going on? This guy got to get taken care of." And so he said, "I'll fight him." That's what he said. "I'll fight him." And well, you know, King Saul, he wanted someone to fight him because he didn't want to.
Right.
He's the one that should have. He says, He says, he got a little kid over here and said he'll fight him. Bring him over to me. He said, look, he's defying the living God. He said, I'll fight him. But what are you talking about, David? He says, look, he said, I'm a teenager. You see these hands? He says, I killed a bear. I killed a lion with my hands. Because God gives me strength. That's what he told. Yeah. And Saul said, something to this boy. Yeah. Because I don't think Saul wanted to fight a lion or a bear bare hand. I don't think anybody. I don't want to fight no bear or a lion with my bare hands. Because I fought him and I was protecting my sheep, and I killed a bear and I killed a lion with my bare hands, tore them apart. And he said, well, okay, have at it, David. And he says, here, put my armor on. And he put that on, and he couldn't put that big old heavy armor on. He couldn't do that. And Saul's big old sword and all that. He says, no. He said, I have not proven these, is the term that David used. It means I can't fight with this on. This is your armor. You're a big man, head and shoulders, everybody. I'm a teenage boy. And he took his little sling. Yep. And I heard it was kind of funny. I heard I like there's some I get a little bit of worldliness in me. I like Barney Fife, you know, and Mayberry stuff, and Barney Fife was Barney Fife was telling the sheriff's little boy about something. He was teaching about the slingshot and how to make slingshot, made his slingshot Opie, and he said, yeah, and he said, wasn't there was something in the Bible about that? And Barney says, yeah, it's in the Bible too, and David had a slingshot. And he says, yeah, and then Opie says to Barney, yeah. He says, Barney, where'd David get the inner tube? Make a slingshot. You know, Barney said, yeah. I don't know where he got the inner tube. You know, Barney, he'd get upset and he went out. Yeah. And then, of course, the sheriff
just had wooden wheels.
He says, well, no, we didn't get it. And
it was a sling.
He had the sling, yeah, and he told him what he had. And he told him about it was leather, and he told, Opie said, oh, but it was funny. So he had that leather sling, and the sheriff told Opie, his boy, about how that was. And then he, you see, he gave him supernatural strength, and remember what Goliath said? What am I, a dog? Said a little boy here. And he said, I'll tell you what's going to happen. And he cursed God. Goliath didn't. He cursed little David and said he was going to make mincemeat out of him. And he says, you come to me with a spear and a sword, but I come to you in the name of the Lord with his power. And he turn that thing around, whack. That guy had all that armor on, just had a little spot here in his helmet, and it hit him there. And he went down. I don't know if it killed him or not. I think probably just like knocked him out. And then Goliath went down, boom, a bit to the ground was actually shaking when that big fella hit the ground. He went over there, took Goliath's sword, took his own sword and cut his head off. Now you just think about this. I saw a picture. There's a famous picture of David holding Goliath's head. Ew. With the blood dripping out of where his neck was cut. That's a gory picture. Can you think of it? But yeah. he held that old boy's head up and shook it in front of them Philistines. You know what they did? They took off. Yeah, yeah. But now I said all that to say this. We don't have any real Goliaths to fight and cut their heads off, but we have enemies that are giant. We have we as individuals can have Goliaths in our life.
Yeah.
Enemies.
Yeah.
We don't. You see, it's a whole different deal. Back in the Old Testament, the children of Israel fought battles, and they had wars, and holy wars actually, and they fought for God and that. But in the New Testament, that's not it at all. We don't fight with physical violence. That's not our MO as a Christian. But we certainly have a lot of enemies, like they did then. David had physical enemies, of course. You know, it said when the kings went out to war, there were battles going out, and David should have been out there in front of his men. He sent his generals. He had a lot of power and all that, and he didn't go face his enemy physically that they had to do in the Old Testament. And the Jews, they fought actual wars. He didn't do that. But he had another enemy that got him, didn't it? It was the enemy of deviant sexual activity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was his enemy, deviant sexual activity. And he looked on the beauty of another man's wife, his faithful Uriah. And that one that Saul had killed his thousands and David his 10,000s, he went and wandering around, watching, looking at something he should have, a naked woman, Bathsheba, bathing. I don't know why he was up on top of the wall. Evidently they had houses. They used to have houses and things around it, probably like Uriah was a captain. His house was probably right outside the castle there. And instead of what he should have done, immediately when he saw the naked woman, he should have sent someone to say, tell that woman not to bathe out there. People looking out from the wall looking at him. No, he looked and he looked again. He looked the third time. Then, you've got to understand, back then, the king was absolute authority. I mean, whatever he did, his word was law. And he just set someone down and said, bring her to me. And he did, and I don't know. I think this is my thought. It doesn't say this in the Bible. But I do not believe that Bathsheba was a willing participant in the sexual activity with David. Now that's my thought. I wouldn't fight with anybody. I wouldn't argue about it, but I don't think she was. I think because he was a king and he beckoned her, I think she loved Uriah. I know Uriah loved her.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful, and so then the word came back that he had gotten her pregnant, and so David, he wanted to, isn't it something? So the enemy of lust got a hold of David, didn't it?
Yeah.
So he had an enemy. Not only did he have the enemies out there, the Philistines and others that he had to battle, but he had enemies. Now we have the enemy of lust here too, don't we? Even this day, we do today. So these enemies of our soul, we have great enemies today, and that's a great enemy. And many men, I just know a situation right now that I just got emailed this afternoon from a pastor of a great church in America, that the man that probably will be the next pastor of that, but the last pastor of that church, great church, big church, a man I knew and trusted, but the enemy of lust and sexual desire got a hold of that man, and he fell because of it. Now he's no longer pastor. So those enemies of lust are there. Well, not only, you see, he did a bad thing, and he tried to cover it up. Remember what he did? He called for Uriah to come back, and because he thought, well, I covered this thing up. I'll just have Uriah come back and sleep with his wife, and she'll have a kid, and they'll think it's his kid. Because, I mean, you can't get pregnant when your husband's out there in the battlefront out there. Right. You come back, and, oh, yeah, well, how did he, and he called for Uriah, and he got him from the battlefront, and he came and he says, well, how's it going, Uriah? Oh, it's going good, and we're battling, and this, that, and other thing. And he says, well, you've been doing a good job, and all that. And he says, go home, spend a couple days at home. He says, oh no, I ain't going home. he said, how can I go home and have the joy of sharing the bed with my wife and having the pleasures of home when the enemy's out there and I should be in battle, I should be with my troops. Well, that's what David should have said. That's where he should have been in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he didn't. So he wouldn't go back. So you know what David did the next day? Got him drunk. Got him drunk, he figured, because you know, alcohol and sex go hand in hand. That's why they put the whorehouses up on the second floor of the taverns. Remember back in the old cowboy movies, you seen that?
Yeah.
Get the guys drunk and playing cards a little bit, and
Yeah.
then the girls come down and come on, big boy, and take them upstairs. That's where they did it. Alcohol and sex go hand in hand. So
Yeah.
he got him drunk. Thought maybe get him drunk. Well, he didn't. He just slept outside. He didn't go there. So then one sin leads to another.
No.
Then he sent a letter by the hand of Uriah. He took his death sentence in his hand, and he went back to the front and gave the letter to Abner. And the letter told Abner, put Uriah at the front of the hottest battle, where the worst battle is. And when he's up there, pull the troops back from him. And that's what he did. And he actually murdered Uriah, which was a terrible thing. So there was enemies. David just didn't have, and his prayer wasn't just talking about the enemies of battle, which it was, but the enemies that we have today. We don't have the physical battles today that he had, but we have the other enemies, don't we? And we can be delivered from them. Isn't that wonderful?
Yep.
That we can do that. And it says here, and here's the way we can be delivered. Look at verse 2. The Lord is my rock and my fortress,
See.
and my deliverer, my God, my strength. In him I will trust, my buckler, that's a shield. And the horn of my salvation and my high tower. Boy, I'm going to tell you what, that verse 2 is a mouthful, isn't it?
Yeah.
That means God's everything. He's our all in all. That's what you need to have today. Have God to be your all in all to defeat the enemies. What's the enemy in your life? There's enemies out here, and there's so many different things. But he can be all of this to us. He can be our Savior, and he can be our salvation, and he can be our high tower, keeping us above things, and he can be everything that we need. Oh, how wonderful it is. I love it. Verse 3, I will call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from mine enemies. Now remember, we said we don't have enemies that we fight with a sword or with a spear or with a gun or with a tank, but we have enemies of our soul, don't we?
Yep.
Yes.
And it will try to destroy us. Yeah, I will call upon the Lord and save from any. And then he goes on talking about a whole bunch. I'm not going to read every one of these verses, but we're going to jump down. And I want to get down here and talk about verse 20. Let's go down to verse 20. I want to cover some more stuff in here. The Lord rewardeth me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands hath he recompensed me. Now, did you know that even you and I, as a saved person, we have rewards according to what we do? You got to understand that. Listen, this is very important. We don't go to heaven because of what we do. We're saved by grace through faith.
Amen, right.
But we have rewards, and we have God's blessing, and we have peace and joy in our heart. I was glad to hear George back here tonight. I was glad to hear George say, just last weekend, he says, I've got a peace. And Joe helped Joe mind me say this. He said, I felt like God was slapping me in the face. I was getting all slapped around. But it's Wednesday, and he said, since the weekend, he'd been doing good. I was glad to hear that. You know what's happening, George? You're learning to trust the Lord more and have this buckler and this shield and this Savior and all of this. And we can all have that.
Amen.
We don't have to fear. You don't have to have any fears. You don't have to have anxious care. You can have this. And the way you can have it, I'll tell you and I as a Christian, you know how we mess up? We don't do right. When I don't do right as a Christian, I'm saved, I'm going to heaven, but if I don't do right as a Christian, I've got problems. The Lord rewardeth me according to my righteousness. He doesn't reward me with heaven. Heaven is a free gift, but He rewards me for what I do after I'm saved. Verse 23, I was also upright before Him, and I kept myself from mine iniquity. Now look at there. You see, we can keep ourselves from sin. There's no excuse for sin. I have kept myself from my iniquity. Now listen to this, 1 Corinthians 10:13. Listen to this. It's a promise to you and I as saved people. There hath no temptation taken you, but is common to man. Common to everybody. Everybody's tempted. But God is faithful, and will not suffer you to be tempted above which ye are able, but will with the temptation make a way of escape that ye may bear it. So for the born-again Christian, for the child of God, there is no excuse for sin. You can be perfect. Will you be perfect? No. Can you be perfect? Yes. Will you be perfect? No. Can you be perfect? Yes. We should be working on to be more perfect day by day. And the more I work towards perfection, and the more I get rid of the sin and keep myself from iniquity, the more joy I'll have in my heart, and the more God will have His hand upon me.